38 seconds. AC, NC. Starting on the AC on Harris, framer. It'll be a quick explanation of how the framer functions, and then extensions of offense. Start.
Would the explanation be like an overview or is it
Yeah, like an overview just over the framework. Alright. Is everyone ready? Just like finals of the round robin, Noah is trying to misconstrue everything in this debate, but his arguments actually linked to the framework because it's not an aggregated concept. He is not really answering the arguments because he has zero warning. Extending Harris out of his life is valuable for different reasons, but we all find value in some part of life. In fact, we all have in some way valid life despite different reasons why value generally has to extend the argument below Harris that aggregation is irrelevant because even though you can necessarily transcend these subjective reasons, that doesn't mean that there's a neutral reason. There's no reason why people are all equal in the sense that you would prefer your life over another person even when in situations of conflict. That is the Levine evidence that says that otherwise you would always be slave to preferences as well. That satisfies the autonomy argument. His response is about how reasons have about causal chain or reason, but there's no reason why you would aggregate the causal chain just because you would look at end states doesn't mean you would necessarily maximize or minimize them. My argument is that the end state may be relevant, that doesn't prescribe any sort of utilitarian calculus. Also, just because they are all parts of an action, my argument is that the relevant part of the action is the choice, because the right to self-defense exists independently of whether something is good or bad for you. For example, you have a right to go to a debate tournament, even though you might be unhealthy and not sleep a lot, but you still have that choice independently of whether there's good end state. His existentialism argument is just that as soon as he wins the NC, then go to his response to Levine. He says that there's no warrant, but the warrant is already extended. He says it's a contradiction that in terms of the end state. From my argument, it's not a contradiction because I'm not allocating end states in the first place. It just contradicts his argument, which means his argument is false. Extend the quorum of the age rule, value gives permission to kill self-defense because we cannot use it to sacrifice the life if it's not your choice. Child driving example. He says that it's just a thought experiment, but above the thought experiment says that the choice is the relevant action because the choice is the determinant of whether or not you can take action in terms of your autonomy. So that is in the link to Harris with the autonomy argument. Remember, it is the choice and the autonomous choice rather than the end state. Then go to Fro. He drops for extending you can determine self-defense based on knowledge of doesn't have because it doesn't set a method for conflict that stakes at the NCI. My argument is that if you don't know about other people, it means you do not know whether you care about them. You don't know whether it's good to kill them or bad to kill them, which means that A leverages off to the NCI means that it is always morally permissible to kill the other person because you do not know whether they have objective value, which means even if I'm losing the Harris evidence, it's still going to be a subjective perspective from the victim and per the pro evidence. It also means that there's never an absolute prohibition to kill per existentialism because the only thing you know is that you exist rather than the fact that other people have any sort of value, because even if you know that they exist doesn't mean that absolutely is entrenched in terms of their absolute value. Extend the after that it is reasonable for suffers to believe that their life engaged by the use of good potential is an overview to a self-defense argument. There's zero warrant why he says that if it's not self-defense if you're harmed. Just because my evidence talks about harm, it doesn't mean that means it's not self-defense. My framework contextualizes what it means to have self-defense. Then go to quiz 2, 3, 4, and 5. First, my evidence talks about deadly force because it says that there are no alternatives. That is going to prove deadly force. That takes out the number 5. The number 2, 3, and 4 already assumes that there is some sort of end status. My argument is that is taken out by the framework. He's going to try to extend all of these blips. My argument is that the overall big picture of the framework is going to take out the reason why these blips are out. And then go to the deterrence of the Leonard stuff. Deadly force, as an overview, deadly force is the criminal justice reform. Clark. The criminal justice system already effectively deals with domestic violence, culminating murder. Fortunately, people take murder seriously. Unfortunately, have murder within the family is not usually seen as the critical end of domestic violence. We are associating criminal prosecution of versus the economy. You should prefer its evidence over the prison evidence. One, it stops future increases of domestic violence, captures the internal link of the NC impacts that also outweighs the magnitude because it outweighs not only future instances but also instances of killing as a response to its scope. It affects society at large as opposed to individual partnership, which is preferable because societal norms affect at the local level. It helps overall gender oppression. The public attention proves 80s and 90s programs that mandatory arrest was because of the publicizing domestic violence. Julie's project, common community engagement about domestic violence. The Milwaukee project, reform credible seizures prove the verification is key. Go to his arguments or go to Wimberley, extend that societal attitudes prevents all domestic violence because considered the private matter 9% of women killed. His response to that this insurance privatized matter. My argument is that if there is no alternative, if the legal system will never do anything, the only way you can take the action is to escape, which means that it's not a re-entrenchment of the privatized matter, it's actually asserting your freedom. That extends the weight analysis means that all alternatives fail any sort of empiric scope because the privacy rate plus well and mind self that takes out all the arguments about the prison abuse. My argument is that the prison abuse empirics are never going to solve because the empirics are skewed by the fact that there's already a public-private distinction. The public distinction is really bad because it's never going to be able to solve those problems, so it's always be a great probability to commute up. It's not linked to anything. It's not linked to the AC frame. He's just misconstruing as we go to the NC. First, the Harris evidence takes out the NC because the NC presupposes that autonomy is a prerequisite because it says when you exist you have the ability to make choices, but if your ability to make choices is not, then makes absolutely sense. Actually, self-defense is obligatory under existentialism shield. The heel will of the oppressor imposes upon each one. The alternative being the enemy of the oppressor is necessary to choose to sacrifice for the one who's the enemy of the enemy. Nor the freedom of all is necessary given that people attempt to oppress others to defend the freedom of all, choose how to live their lives. Certain people are involved in oppression due to ignorance nonetheless, unless we are to remain in the use for the sound because it is a specific individual between the ways on scope, but it's also he talks about the absolute value of life is an extinction link, but he has no extinction link, so there's no warrant for why there's an absolute value of life. Yep.
I have where can I? Can I see Geo?
Yeah.
on the extension of Hartford 2. Okay. So we're going to extend the Hartford 2 evidence that provide existence must be intrinsic against give value, meaning cross social transcendental opportunity. This contradiction leads to absurdity. Remember that in the first negative speech I make analysis about how, in order for the value and reasons we have for valuing our own lives to exist, that requires certainty and fair critique, that his extension of the Harris evidence which provides the value and the reasons we have for that value to life is just a reason you have to look to the anti-fair. This argument, but conceded from the anti, that's comparative and co-opts internally. That's the reason why you look to the existentialist framework comes first, which is the only change table has is basically going to be the Giles evidence. He says it's just like the round robin, but I read a different anti for the reason. Except the Hartford 1 evidence just also established the ethical lucidity because it indicates the question you have to this futile value can only be found through ordinary experience. This embedded clash with the AC because it says value can only be found through ordinary experience, but in order to explain that value we need to look to some sort of transcendent absolute without leads to some sort of a paradoxical conclusion which ultimately can only be resolved through the absurd condition that's a conceded internal war. His only argument here is that it's a presupposition of autonomy. That doesn't answer back the claim of the Hartford 2 evidence and it's mitigated on Hartford 1. Also, it isn't a reason why it's a presupposition of autonomy. My argument is that autonomy only gives rise in a world of absurdity. 3, even if this argument has not impacted well enough to take out the NC, it's 1 for the argument against the framework, but he has conceded co-option arguments is the reason why it comes first. His next argument is the Gilles element. This is ultimately going to be very bad evidence. First, he's talking about the freedom of persons, but he's not actually doing analysis into why this links it to the ethical lucidity. My Hartford evidence explains how the freedom of persons is derived from the absolute value to existence. The only reason why the freedom that is being violated in the Gilles evidence exists in the first place is because of our existence, which means the violation in the A point based off of the Hartford 3 evidence explanation is on a level prior to what Gilles evidence is talking about. That freedom only matters in the world where we already established the existence, which is the reason why his term doesn't matter. So also you can classify the Camus evidence in the case that the justification for having action kills our existence, which is the reason why we no longer have that freedom, which means since the justification collapses on itself, that action can never be something that instills freedom, which answers back the internal world of Gilles evidence. Second, the Hartford 3 evidence answers it back because it indicates that the only way we can be consistent with the absolute value of life and allow us to have that type of freedom is by looking to an ethical lucidity which entails an absolute value of life. Fourth, third, this is not a reason why the UI is offense under this standard because he's adopting the arguments that one needs you and action that is inconsistent with the absolute value of life and devalues our own freedom, which means if the freedom matters, it's talking about the Gilles evidence. That's the reason why it comes first. The last argument is that this is not impacted well enough in terms of the standards to always refer the NR responses. Don't grant him new wave arguments in the next speech because he should have done that in the 1AR. So the standard is consistent with the ethical lucidity as detailed by the Hartford 3 evidence to explain how, since I've already proved absurdity exists through the Hartford 1, Hartford 2 evidence, while the only ethics that can matter is the ethical lucidity, this is the only can only be respected through the absolute value of life. The Hartford 3 evidence is very precisely specific. The question that you have to oppose death and that murder and suicide are never things that are okay. This means it imposes on a limitation on the enjoyment of life, and likewise, one's freedom is limited. That's the exact rhetoric of the card. That legitimate freedom is only one. We have an absolute value of life, which answers back as Gilles evidence call for the evidence. I am doing the comparison, whereas he is not. Don't allow that new comparison. Then extend the 8 point that deadly force results in the death of the attempted murder against the abuser, denying the absolute value of life. The only justification of the Canals for acting in self-defense is their own absolute value of life. By killing the abuser destroys their justification. There's the destroys their value of life. The agent only matters as much as choices and using your choices to violate an agent does have p-values your own existence. Remember, this impacts back to the ethical lucidity because it impacts the death. He's also dropping Turns case analysis underneath the 8 point indicates that it kills your value of your choices, and your choices no longer have any value in a world where you are taking an action that forces those choices to collapse upon themselves. That is a conceded analysis that does not rely on the evaluation of the entities. It says the very act of self-defense from the agent relative perspective destroys your choice and your own reasons for acting, which is the reason why it turns the agent relativity argument. So even if you think I'm losing the anti-standard, the conceded Turns case analysis underneath, I'll think back to the anti's reason vote act. Net. AC. Starting on the overview, I made to his contentions. Extend the 2 point that the setting of ends requires looking to the action because that is the only way we can evaluate the action because the action is consistent with trying to reach some sort of end. He's saying these arguments are blippy and I'm extending them. It doesn't matter if it's inconsistent with the big picture of the framework. But my argument is the big picture of the framework entails evaluating the ends of a person. I'm not making an argument of consequences as my argument is from an agent relative perspective. They need to look to the ends of their action and see if the action they're taking from their own perspective are consistent with their own right, which is the reason why my self-defense terms actually matter. Then I said the 3 point that you should filter your end status to the best one, which is a conceded argument that if your setting of ends matters, you need to choose the set of ends that is the best for you. That is the reason why on the 2 and the 3 of the overview of the attention, you will be evaluating the end status when you're looking to deadly force. He's trying to win offense back, but even if he's winning a link church to the prison argument, he is conceding the Saunders evidence which functions as a net benefit. It is the reason why we cannot look to deadly force because it leads to retaliation, which is the reason why the action of self-defense will never be an action. It's also not contingent on any sort of ends evaluation because it says the means of self-defense themselves are contradictory because it just leads to further retaliation and any risk that deadly force doesn't solve this reason vote for me. But now go to the prison argument. His Clark evidence from 1997, this is not applied nowadays. It has to do analysis to why the criminal justice system in 1987 would be changed through the severity of murder. The reason why is because the debate over the death penalty was contentious, but he doesn't do that analysis well. He says it outweighs the societal aspect of this, outweighs in terms of time frame. The victims of the use deadly force will always end up going to prison. That's the latter evidence impacted by Sumner says the type of sexual abuse they have, but it's the how Holly also surveys the victims and indicates it's worse from their subjective perspective. That's John Wayne analysis, which means that even if the end status shouldn't be evaluated from the victim's own subjective perspective, they have said that they would not choose this as a moral option, which their own reasons conclude that they would not choose to be sent to prison because of the sexual abuse. This also is a reason why since they're being sent to jail, even if he has barred society change that, if there's a marginal decrease, there'll still be women who sent to jail now. He says there's no uniqueness for it, but that doesn't matter. Now, go to the Camus evidence. Look, if I'm losing all of the end status arguments, that's fine. The Camus one evidence is a turn to the act. It indicates that the only justification you have for acting in self-defense is your own existence, i.e. the only justification for self-defense can be agent relative, but when you use an agent relative justification for self-defense, that collapses on itself because it destroys your own value of existence, it destroys your own reasons for valuing yourself. That's a conceded internal warrant as to why it turns the act. Daniel can't just say it doesn't later without doing the analysis when it's very clear against the NCNR as to how it matters. The way the round boils down is very simply. If you think that the ends don't matter, you look to the NC. Too much conceded analysis. He has conceded turns case from the A point. The Camus evidence also turns the app, but I'm winning the prison debate. His reform arguments are not offense, and he doesn't access deterrence because there's no spillover. I've answered back. Even if he accesses deterrence, no time frame.
Thanks. All right. Proposal number 3. You extended against Gio, or you play against Gio?
Well, I made a lot of arguments against Gio. I think number 3 was that Oxford 3 answers, but
Can I see your Oxford?
sure.
Okay. AC on Fro, then MC. Overview about the round first. Is everyone ready? Alright. This is an easy ballot. Noah makes a huge mistake. He cannot expect to run my negative case and win this debate. First, extend the Fro evidence. You cannot determine self-defense based on the knowledge that the agent does not have because epistemically you would not always epistemically limited because you do not set a method to chronic system. Artificial assumption to make that knowledge. The implication of the last feature means that under the NC we would never care about the absolute value of another person, which means I concede the NC framework. This means we not care about the absolute value of precious terminal defense against the Hawker-3 and the Hawker-2 analysis. This means that it is always morally permissible as long as whether there's a risk of offense that we would be reasserting our freedom through the G11. It indicates that this is the implications that on an epistemic level means you it would be permissible. Then go to the NC. Send Gilles. Alright. Extent of this contradiction forces the choice must favor the assertion freedom by the oppressed to pass. The specific warrant is that unless we remain complicit with oppression, we have a duty to revolt against it because the oppressor remains free to renounce them for their soul self-contradiction because the oppressor attempts to subjugate the freedom of others. We're forced to assert our own freedom. This means that they turn back there because we're actually asserting our freedom. The key point here is the autonomy argument. I'm making my arguments that the choice is what determines the action. You can see the argument that the self-defense is not permissible based on the self-defense is not permissible based on the NC that it's but even if it is permissible based on the NC, it's my argument that the autonomy is still an extra prerequisite because on the NC, my argument is that autonomy allows you to make the initial choice. That means that the extent the weight analysis, he drops the weight analysis on Gilles. The extent the 8 point that on an individual level is more important because you don't necessarily care about all the other people, i.e. because you are the only person who understands your existence. You are the only person who can experience that pain, which means that if somebody is aggressing you, you do not have a reason to care for that aggressor. You just have a reason to care about your own pain because that is the only thing you know for certain. This is a reason why comparatively I have offense because the Gilles evidence is the one that takes into account the fact that the only thing we know is that we exist rather than the value of the other people. He is dropping that evidence. The Hawkwood 3 does not answer because it just says that we have an absolute value. This answers the Hawkwood 3 evidence. That extent the B-weight analysis, there is no extinction link means that there is no absolute value because the Hawkwood 2 and 3 analysis rely on extinction because they say that you would not be able to recognize anybody else if you are all dead because you need to be able to, it's a reference point for you. The Hawkwood 3 evidence says that when you are a lucid man, there's an absolute value because you cannot deny the value of other people because it would be a rejection of the absurd condition. But my argument is that you would only reject the absurd condition in a situation where everybody is dead, but at the point where you kill one person, that is only a small mitigation of the absolute value argument, which means that my argument is that since I'm doing weight analysis between the value of the individual in that instance and the value of the aggressor in that instance, it would mean that it would be comparatively preferable to use the Gilles evidence. Number one is that I trigger a violation. My response is that the Fro evidence says that there is no violation because you have no reason to epistemically care about that in terms of the self-defense argument. You should always prefer this analysis to argument specific in terms of the self-defense claims as opposed to general claims about morality. Number two, he says that it functions on a level prior. It does not function on a level prior because my argument answers back his absolute value argument. Then his argument about Meyer, remember, he says he's number 4 and 5 aren't actually offense. He says that this isn't offense for me. It obviously is offense for me because you can read the card. It talks about existentialism and how a self-defense is necessary right because you need to assert your freedom. He just says that freedom is irrelevant. My argument is that freedom is the manifestation manifestation of existence, i.e. we should be able to pursue our own, we should be able to pursue and reach the truth of our arguments. You should read the Harvard evidence because I caught this evidence. He says that we need to be able to pursue the truth and the denial of our freedoms denies our ability to do so. So that is the reason why you affirm. His number 5 argument says that there's no impact, but there's an impact because it impacts to turning D and C. So you should affirm.
Pro
Yeah.
and C.
Who wants it first?
Three things, right? Yeah.